See, therefore I will bewail with the weeping of Jazer, the vine of Sima. I will water thee with my tears, O Heshbon and Elilah, for the shouting for thy summer fruits, and for thy harvest is fallen, and gladness is taken away, and joy out of the plentiful field, and in the vineyards there shall be no singing, neither shall there be shouting. The traders shall trade out no wine in their presses. I have made their vintage shouting to cease, wherefore my bowels shall sound like an harp for Moab, and mine ear.
Hello, good morning. Welcome to Line by Line Bible Studies. We're continuing the book of Isaiah in chapter 16. Continuing with thoughts about Moab, prophecies concerning Moab. I thought I had the wrong headset on, but I just don't have it loud enough, I guess. So, we're going through all this. Moab being brought to the fords of Arnon, and basically warning them of the difficulty that they would face ahead, and that they should, be kind to God's people. As it says, bewray not him that wandereth, bewray being an Old English word meaning to reveal. Don't reveal them. Let them hide with you. Protect them. Let my outcasts, the people who are not, those who have not been captured or killed or left, are wandering, and let them dwell with you, Moab. Be kind to them, because most of the Israelites have no. It's a strange thing, when you have a hatred between groups of people, sometimes it's based entirely on what the leadership is doing. Like, Moab has been subdued by the king. It's not the average person that's, putting them under their thumb. The same thing with, a lot of times people will hate America for the things the government does, and they exhibit the hatred on the people. And that's kind of understandable, though, because it is government by the people, for the people, of the people, whatever. But to the degree that, I think in times past I said we are the government. That's not exactly true. We're not the government, but we do control it. We control the government. And the governing, when I say we're self-governing, I mean we're self-controlled. We govern ourselves primarily. But, there's a lot which we have no control over. We can't, God knows after the past year, as much as people would have liked to have controlled what was going on for one way or the other. Some people would have liked to force everyone to do something, and some people would like something else. And it's not easy to just get the government to do what you want. And certainly, but the thing is, you end up getting held responsible for everything your government does by people affected by it outside. Meaning, other countries affected by us, they blame us. And they've got every right to. That's why we got to hold our government responsible. Unless we find our enemies holding us responsible for not controlling our government. Which we are not doing. We are not controlling the government. The government, in a way, watching The Last President made me realize that the government is truly out of control, and that the government, and I mean the unelected state bureaucracy, which is, almost a hereditary thing now. Because, you get people in the bureaucracy that raise their kids to become public servants, and pretty soon you get whole families of public service. And it becomes more about protecting the interests of the governing state apparatus than it does protect the interests of the people of the country. And the country begins to serve the state and not the state the country as it's supposed to be. Alright, well, whatever. Let's go back to Moab. Verse 6. We have heard of the pride of Moab. He is very proud, even of his haughtiness, and his pride, and his wrath. But his lies shall not be so. Wait, did we already do that? We did that verse. So why do I have verse? Okay, whatever. Verse 6. Wait, I did verse 7, 8. Where am I? Oh, I put the wrong verse on. That's annoying. Wait a second. You know what's my problem is? I'm so familiar with this passage, it all looks familiar. Where did I leave off? Is it, hold on. I know we did verse 5. Or did we do... Whatever, let's just talk about it briefly. Because I could swear... Wait a second. Yeah, because we did languish. The fields of Heshbon languish, the vine of Sibmah. The lords of the heathen have broken down the principal plants. We did this. Oh, it's funny. I didn't talk much about Moab's pride, though. He also mentions it twice. He is very proud. We know about his haughtiness and his pride and his wrath. His pride is mentioned like 3 times. We have heard of the pride. He is very proud, even of his haughtiness and pride. Moab was a kind of a minor nation, and sometimes that's all it takes. You know, there's the little dog syndrome, the little man syndrome, where the small size contributes to the aggression, meaning. Sometimes the smaller someone is, they become more aggressive. Like, I knew a midget in school who was a very, let's say, not physically aggressive. Obviously not. He didn't have the ability. I mean, he couldn't get all physically aggressive. Though I remember he had a sort of an edge of violence, like he'd start hitting you, as far as that you felt like that. And he was an unpleasant person. And I never had much to do with him, but I'm assuming that he had a hard time. And that people had been mean to him. And so he'd learned to be aggressive. In a personality, he had an aggressive personality, meaning he was aggressively mean, and it was easy to piss him off, and for whatever reason. But the point is, sometimes they have that sense of like the small dog syndrome. We have a small dog, and it is nutty. And small countries have the same problem. It's a masculine thing that that's the being oversized. If I ever had the small member problem, I mean, like sometimes it's like men put like a stand in. They joke about it being about their private parts. I mean, they're compensating for a small private. I don't understand that because it's like nobody knows about your private parts, I guess, except for the ladies or whatever, or the lady. I don't know. But I don't know if it's about that, but sometimes, yes, it's true. When people are weak, they compensate. When they're small in some area, they want to appear to be bigger. I knew a guy who was small in high school, a little guy, got picked on. Not like, I mean, he was kind of a jerk too, so he brought it on himself, but whatever. He got picked on though. He definitely got picked on, and even if he made it happen, it happened, and he's just kind of not too intelligent socially. I mean, he kind of found himself getting on the wrong side of the wrong people. And, and I heard later in life, he became like all roided up. He was, all muscles and roids, and he's still 5'4" or whatever, but loaded with roids. Compensation. He's making up for his small size by overcompensating and being big. And, obviously as a big person, a lot of these things never affected me. I never had that. Though, I think in some ways I did feel small socially. And so sometimes I feel like I do compensate also. Like, when I'm in public, there's no secret. It's like I have I'm an introvert, and I was always shy as a kid. But when I go in public and I talk to people in public, I appear to be very extroverted, but it's actually the way I deal with the nervousness. And so I don't even feel nervous anymore, but it's just literally the way I learned to deal with it was by talking up the situation. You know, it was by taking control. I compensated. A lot of times when you have nothing to be proud of, those people are the most proud. They have nothing to be, they've done nothing, they have no accomplishments, but they're the most touchy. Because, of course, and it makes it the most obvious, right? Because, you know, I admit, I've had a lot of people attack me on a lot of levels, right? I've had people attack my manhood. I've had people attack my whatever. You know, I've been attacked. It never does anything. You can't. Manhood's a silly place to attack me. Because one, I never put a lot of stock. I've never felt like this strong urge to like prove myself like that. Well, probably because as a young boy I did. You know, I proved myself at least to some degree. And also the degree I don't take myself that seriously, right? But sometimes when we have nothing, we become very proud of what we do have. What we do have becomes, because we have so little, it's like if we lose the little bit of respect we have left. Like we have just one little bit of respect. And, you know, I mean, it's not like someone who has, I've got respect in many different, I've got respect for my children, respect for my wife, respect for my peers, respect from family members. If somebody disrespects me, I just smile, because, you know, depending on who it is, obviously, because people who have disrespected me are probably thinking right now, like, really, Paul? I remember disrespecting you, and you did not smile. And I'm not. This isn't a brag, but I can be a difficult customer. Let's just put it that way. I can be a very difficult customer, and I don't mean that just in a store sense. I just mean that in life. Like when you're dealing with me, is like. It can be difficult for a number of reasons, you know. Whenever you're dealing with smart people, you know, I even see it. You know, I'm like, I'm too clever. You know, I shouldn't win sometimes. I shouldn't be so clever. Anyway, whatever. I'm not talking about myself. Well, I kind of need to, as far as to understand pride. It helps me when I look at my own experiences, it helps me understand. And then sometimes I say them out loud to inform my understanding right now, so I can say something even more, add something informative for you, hopefully. And that's the idea. Without some sort of thing to be, you know, upset over, there's some basis for the pride. There has to be some, whatever it is. If it's like, I'm a Moabite, you know, I've got the pride. But it's very common that when you have a small, you know, if it's a tiny country with no military, they're going to be the most proud of whatever military they got. If they got one jet, man, that jet is the best jet in the world as far as they're concerned. And obviously, when you're caught up in pride, like I said, Moab is a small country. Why is he so proud? Well, he's got nothing else. That's all he's got. Sometimes that's all people got is their pride. You know what I mean? You gotta be careful of people like that, because when people got nothing but their pride, they can be very dangerous. Because it becomes the one thing they want to protect at all costs. You know, there's so many bad things happen because of people's pride, man. I mean, my brother had a friend murdered in high school because he insulted somebody's sister, and that guy stabbed him and killed him. You know, and that's all about pride. You know, what'd you say? What were you dare let those words out? His pride was famous, but his lies would not be famous. That's what I get. Right? We have heard of the pride of Moab. He's proud. His haughtiness is pride. We've heard of his lie, but his lie is not so. That to me seems like it's saying, and I forgot if I looked this up last time, his lie shall not be so. That song, Isaiah 16, that's at the beginning, is one of my favorites, oddly. And same thing with the next chapter, actually. Verse 6, his lies shall not be so. His lies, not so. Okay. And they're not... Okay, whatever. Yeah, it's a negation. It's fine. It's fine. Alright. Therefore shall Moab howl for Moab. Everyone shall howl for the foundations. This is where we left off, huh? No, we did the fields of Heshbon. I feel like I didn't... Oh, whatever. Moab shall howl for Moab. I mean, he's going to be mourning for himself. You know, we sometimes do mourn for ourselves. It's not so unusual. It sometimes means that there's no one else to mourn for you. Or that, you know, your pride is going to, you know, leave you alone and mourning for yourself. You know, there's another way to say it. Your lies will alienate people from you. You know, someone who lies is not going to have a lot of friends. They're untrustworthy. A lying, proudful person. You know, nothing like a person who's full of pride and lies. I can think of nothing more boorish as far as a friend, and more useless as a friend. Someone who's always just so concerned with building themselves up in your eyes and being touchy about it. You know, sounds like a load of money. You know, sounds like a lot of fun. Sounds like a really fun person. Angry, proud. But, yeah. I mean, not that I don't have pride. I'm not trying to compare myself that way. I'm just saying, like, I never had it from being small. Obviously. I never had a touchiness about that, per se. But it's like, I have my vulnerable points. I don't think I should give them out, though. I've been warned I'm too open, because my enemies then will have a place to poke at me. I don't really care, though. And if I could think back and remember, I probably would mention it. Who cares? The enemy already knows all your weak spots, by the way. You know, it's not like I gave Satan some intel he didn't have. Oh no. But my earthly enemies, though, those are different, aren't they? They don't know. And Satan has not the power to, per se, whisper secrets in their ear, thank God. You know, he can influence people, but he can't whisper secrets in their ear. Not that I know of. Because that would be something. You know. Yeah, the foundations would be stricken of Kir Haresheth. The wall of earthenworks, right? You know, the fields, the vine. So they were in verse 9 around. Was it? Wait a second. Okay, well, I think we actually left out. I don't know, whatever. We're in here, whatever. We're talking about these verses we either didn't cover or we covered them poorly. Because verse 10 I don't remember covering. If I did, I just totally blasted over it. So let's just go with 9. Well, wait a second. Let's just verse 8. For the fields of Heshbon languish, they droop. The fields are all... Because when we talked about the actual, along with the Assyrian invasion, also is a drought. You know, and also they've broken down. And you know, when the soldiers have marched to the land, they'd also trample crops. There's a lot of damage that goes on when armies invade. The lords of the heathen have broken down the principal plants thereof. They've come even to Jazer. And also the principal plants, when it says things like that, it also says that it's like, it's more talking about more than just their fields. It's talking about sort of like their world. And the principal plants of the garden are sometimes like the leaders and the governors and so on and so forth, sometimes symbolically. You know, it's not clear that it's speaking symbolic here, but just in case. They wandered through the wilderness. Her branches are stretched out. Yeah, we totally did that. I remember the branches are stretched out. So I just didn't cover it as well as I thought or remembered. Or whatever. That's all right. I've done longer recaps than this. Wherefore I will bewail with the weeping of Jazer, the vine of Sibmah. I mean, there was a weeping that went on in Jazer. I'm going to weep the same way over the vine of Sibmah. And it's just whatever. This is Moabite locations. So it makes sense to them. You know, maybe it's their chief winemaking city. It's not relevant. There is a vine in Sima. And vines are often symbolic of sort of a spiritual type thing. Specifically, spiritual type things. Literally, spiritual blessings and stuff are sometimes symbolized by the vine or religion. Like, in fact, for example, chapter 5, the vineyard of the Lord of hosts is the house of Israel. He planted a vineyard in a very fruitful hill and watered it, and all these analogies. Jesus used the vine in a number of parables. In fact, he said of himself, he said, I am the true vine, and my Father is the husbandman. Just like in the prophets. I will water you with my tears, O Heshbon and Leah, for the shouting for thy summer fruits and thy harvest fall. I'm sad, because there's no more joyous time of the year, especially in an agrarian society in simpler times, than harvest. It's a lot of work, but it's also the bringing in of a year. You also see the produce. Like you get to see what kind of harvest you had. And oftentimes, since there's a lot of work, there's a lot of time on your hands as you're working to shout and sing as part of the. I know we're living in a modern era and people don't generally do this, but I sing when I work. I sometimes in public, sometimes not. I do it at home, but I also do it sometimes in public because I just don't care. It's powerful to me. To me, someone walking around singing is the more powerful person than the person quietly going about their business. And I like power moves like that because, like I said, I grew up shy and introverted. And to me, anything that sort of like punches that right in the face is always like feels good to me. I like to go up against it. So I like to do things that are not, not shy. Whenever I've always intentionally fought against it. And if you have children, don't, by the way, this is good advice. If you have a child, don't be like, oh, he's shy, and encourage it. Don't do that. And don't force them either, but gently encourage them to not be shy or to find other ways to compensate. And it may take a while, but don't encourage shyness by anticipating it. You don't want to anticipate your shy child and protect them from things. Let them be shy and screw it up for themselves. Because I can tell you, I had no end of misery in my childhood from my shyness. It made me feel miserable. Because I wanted to say things, but I was afraid to. And by the same measure, the degree I wanted to say something, the more important it was to me, the harder it was to say. It was like torture. And even to this day, sometimes I can't say the things I want to say, but we're able to, I've been able to overcome it somewhat, and that's good. But for the kids, that's an important thought. Don't encourage shyness in your children. Encourage outgoingness, but also realize that a shy child is going to have an uphill battle. But don't make it worse by continually, reminding them to be shy. Like, oh, he's shy. Don't mind. We'll keep him away. Well, hi. Oh, don't worry. I'll talk for you. Avoid that, and never give up on it. Don't ever just think. Because it helps. It helps. It's good for people who are introverted to learn to be. You will find it useful. You will like it. You will like being in control of awkward situations, or feeling in control. I should say. You're not actually in control, but it makes you feel in control. To do what you want, as opposed to be carried around by circumstances. But just shouting for the summer fruits. There's this happy time of harvest that comes, and instead, gladness is taken away. I know we didn't cover this part, or did we? I don't know. Whatever. No, I think we was verse 8. We should be on verse 9, I think. That's why 6 seemed right. It was an upside down 9. Today when we get done, I'm gonna write down. We'll probably be at the end of the chapter or whatever, but I'll try to write down where we are. I used to do it right away. So But like all the joy and the happiness taken away from what should be a happy occasion. Of course, there is no harvest. There is no expected thing because the enemy has come through and taken away the people who would be there. You know what I mean? It's like you have this. It's like imagine you're planning a wedding and all of a sudden something comes through and kills half the guests who are supposed to show. It's not. You could still throw the wedding, but it's not going to be the happy occasion it was supposed to be. You know, same thing with the harvest. You can still have a harvest of sorts, but there aren't going to be no singing. There's like for the most part, there isn't going to really be a harvest because one person can't do the job. Everyone's going to eat butter and honey, as it said. It was very customary, especially when treading out wine, to shout and sing, because I guess it was just the thing people did. And it was a joyous occasion, bringing all the grapes and smush them. We're making wine. Everyone's all excited about the about the harvest. All that is taken away, and it's the most, that kind of joy, like the joy. I can explain it to my family when Dad comes home with the groceries. But I mean, it's kind of exciting and happy. Oh, look at what we got. Look at all the fruit that has come in this year. God has taken it all away. Wherefore my bowels shall sound like a harp for Moab, and my inward parts for Kir-Haresh, for their cities. My bowels, the idea of like inwardly. If you've ever had inward feelings, you ever feel butterflies in your stomach or sick to your stomach? I remember when I was in the hospital in 98, and my son was in the hospital. I remember the guy telling me, your son may not live. I remember losing everything, going dark in my stomach, feeling like just like empty, but like worse. You know what I mean? Like just horrible emptiness in the pit of my stomach. And then you feel this, you feel it. There are all kinds of psychosomatic effects to emotion. The stronger the emotion, the stronger the effect on the body. People can, you can just cry and have tears water your eyes, but you can also sob so bitterly that your body will heave and buck with the, just people can get so affected by it. And of course, heartbreak. I mean, you can feel it in your heart. Whatever you want to say, it affects your body. It affects your inward parts. And what he's saying is this, even though Moab and Israel have not always had an amicable relationship, there's no hatred. Israel doesn't hate Moab, for sure. I don't know about Moab and Israel. There's probably some resentment. But they're not, but there's never been a, they were specifically told not to attack Moab or to try to take their cities. Israel never tried to occupy the land of Moab or take it away from them. So that also is, they've been allowed to coexist together. So the animosity is not that strong. It's more, like I said, it's more like a brotherly rivalry, a neighborly resentment, maybe. I mean, there is some ill will, but there also can be warmth. They aren't. This isn't a nation they're constantly at war with, for the most part. The Moab paid tribute. I mean, and that's often will be. You'll either fight with your neighbor or be dominated by them. And Moab tended to be dominated by Israel. And that's just the thing. But Israel also, that makes you understand, like, Israel dominated Moab. So Moab's pain to Israel, they have no ill will for Moab. Or Moab, at time, there is reason. I mean, there are things. Oh, wait. Oh. Wait a second. Yeah. Right. Balak, who taught the children of Moab, Ammon? Was Balak telling the children of Moab or the children of Ammon, or just the children of Lot in general? I forget. But it's one of them, and it's all right. But yeah, of course, there's the story of Balak, the son of Beor, the prophet, who rode in on the, not Balak, Balaam. Balaam, son of Beor. Balaam's ass, you may have heard of. The ass that spoke. And I don't mean his rear end, I mean his donkey. His donkey spoke to him. I was about to make a joke about the other kind of ass speaking to him, but it was probably not appropriate. Actually, it just didn't have a punchline. So. And then Baal shall sound like a harp for Moab, my inward parts for Kir-Haresh. And it shall come to pass when it's seen that Moab is weird. Okay. Oh, yeah. But he feels a strong emotion for Moab. My bowels sound for them. Because it's like all their happiness is taken away. And no one ever wished such evil upon them. Even though there's history. Yes, the children of Ammon. Why do I keep saying Ammon? I'm going to settle that once and for all. Oh, Balaam who taught Balak. Balak was the king of... Balaam who taught Balak to cast a stumbling block before the children of Israel, to eat things sacrificed unto idols. Oh, I think that was the daughter... They committed whoredom with the daughters of Moab, right? Balaam? Balaam? I spelled... Oh, no. Okay. Numbers 22. Who is he? Oh, it is Moab. Okay. Moab, when Israel first came to enter the Holy Land, Moab was intimidated, and so they called on the prophet Balaam to come curse Israel. And when he came, and the angel nearly slew him on the way and said, look, you better say what I tell you to say, etc., etc. So he goes there, and he doesn't curse Israel. Rather, he utters a blessing. He says, I can't curse whom God has blessed. This can't be done. But then he taught the Moabites how to cause the Israelites to curse themselves. And so the daughters of Moab came in and seduced the children of Israel to worship other gods, using sex, actually. And they committed whoredom with the daughters of Moab and worshipped idols, and God was wroth with them, but it wasn't enough to accomplish whatever Balak was hoping to accomplish as far as to turn them back. In fact, it was not even necessary because Israel was not going to invade Moab. And so his interest in cursing the Israelites was unnecessary. And of course, for some reason, that's going to cause some hostility between the Israelites and the Moabites, but not a tremendous amount. I mean, what they did was not, it's not good, but it's like, they sent their daughters, they sent women in to seduce them. It's not it's not the same as sending in fire towers to burn everyone to a crisp. There's different ways you can fight, and obviously that's less aggressive, less aggressive, but it's less blood and guts, right? And less likely to cause resentment. Because even though it is every bit as bad and dangerous, to seduce someone to idolatry is to endanger their soul. But the person being seduced doesn't feel the danger, so they are not as resentful as the one who's putting them in danger. You know what I mean? So the children of Israel, you can see how that, while that incident is obviously wrong, and it would upset prophets and priests and judges and people who cared about the things of God, but the average person maybe thinks, they sent some horrors, so what? Well, they were wise enough not to attack. So he's going to mourn for them, and it shall come to pass when it is seen that Moab is weary on the high place, that he should come to his sanctuary to pray, but he shall not prevail. This is the word that the Lord has spoken concerning Moab since that time. Yeah, it's not quite certain here. So it shall come to pass when it is seen that he is weary on the high place, he shall come to his sanctuary to pray. I understand what the weary on the high place is not the sanctuary. But high places are often places you go to pray. They would worship the false gods and offer sacrifices on the high places. So I just want to see if we get any insight from the Hebrew on that, because weary on the high place, Bama, weary. See, this is a good thing I looked this up. Weary maybe is a bad translation. I like this is better because I think of it weary in terms of exhausted, right? I'm out of energy. But there's another kind of weary, right? See the definition? To be weary or impatient. If I think of this as impatience, or look at this, become impatient, exhausted, find difficulty. Impatience also translated. These are the way it's used in the NASB. Tired, but wearied, weary. To be weary, impatient, and okay. To tire. So that makes sense. Because if it's a sense of impatience, now I can see. He's impatient with God. He's like, he's going to pray and he's like, help me, my gods. I don't think he's going to the Lord God, but he's going to the high places. Chemosh. Bel. Whatever, whatever gods he serves. Usually Chemosh is the, I believe the Moabites, the abomination of the Moabites was Chemosh. Or Chemosh. Or Chemosh. Or Chemosh. I forgot how to pronounce it. But that was their abomination, their idol. So they go to the high places to pray. And he's impatient. Where's my answer? We need answers now. The Assyrian will be here in days. It's like they go. There's this thing also, it talks about prayer, like where the heavens are as brass. And you go to pray and you feel like there's no answer. You ever pray? I mean, I know. I've prayed for things. And I got tired of praying. At least for a while. And, I never was able to ever keep up praying constantly about any one thing. I don't know about you. Some people are very dedicated. There are better Christians than me. I know that. Oof. For sure. More dedicated, better prayers, all that. I try to do the best I can with what I have, which is me. I got to work with this guy. Not with more responsible, better Christians than I, but with me. I'll do as best I can. So he goes to pray and he becomes impatient with his prayers. There's a lot of times the effectual, fervent prayer of a righteous man. But also there's patience. We with patience look for things. We look for the righteousness of God with patience. We look for the salvation of God with patience. Because there's nothing else. We have to look with patience because we can't make it happen any sooner than it's going to happen. And but at times when people run out of patience when they pray to God and they do foolish things. For example, Saul lost his entire kingdom over patience. He did. Saul, king of Israel, was waiting for the prophet Samuel to show up to basically make sacrifice to God and to do the whatever was necessary for the battle or post battle. I forget exactly what. And he didn't want to wait. He was too anxious, so he did the sacrifices himself. And it seems like a no big deal. But we should be patient when God gives us the word. Like in your patience possess ye your souls. There's so many verses that indicate patience as an essential ingredient to so many good things. And it's something that's always in short supply. It's a weird thing because, you can't have eternal patience. It doesn't make sense. Because patience waits for an end. It's like the point of making people wait is not just like patience. Patience is not surrender. There's a big difference. Surrender, surrender your urges, surrender your desires, surrender your expectations. I don't want nothing. I don't want anything from God. I got no prayers to God. I got nothing outstanding I want from him. I got nothing. Well, that's one way. But other than that, we have to be patient. Because there are things we want. There are things we desire. There are things we need. And we pray to God for those, and we need to be patient. And especially, no matter how dire the circumstances, the more dire, the more important. The more likely we should be patient with God to the very end, because in the worst situations, there's no one who can help us but God. You know, there are some situations that are beyond your control. Most of life is beyond our control, but certainly you can get in situations that you have no power to extract yourself from, and only God can help you. You know, and the only thing to do in that situation is to be patient and wait on the Lord, because you can't get out of it yourself. I do very much believe, you know, they say, not the scriptures, but people say the Lord helps those that help themselves. I'm not a big fan of that, because God helps sometimes people who don't help themselves. He helps people who are helpless. God helps the helpless too, you know. But I will say this, that as much as God gave you the power to do things, you know what I mean? Like, I don't expect God to make the stones outside my house into bread every morning for me to eat, or to rain manna down. He fed the children of Israel with manna in the wilderness because they had no other source of food. He had to send quail and other things. I mean, they had to be sent to them out in the wilderness because there was no food. He had to make water from a rock because there was no water. So, yeah, it required a miracle. But in my life, I don't need God to turn the rocks into food, because I have the means to get the food. I have the means to get the water. And inasmuch as it is in me, and I have the power to do things, that means God has given me that power. That means God is in some measure doing it through me. You know what I mean? So, in some measure, I cannot sit around just waiting for God to do things, because He gave me things to do. He invested in me gifts to be used. You know what I mean? If He's given me the wisdom to understand things, you know what I mean? I got to use that. If He's given me the hands to do things, I got to do that. Because He's worked it. And it's I'm part of His plan. I'm part of His working. And I want to fulfill that part. I don't want to leave it slack. I don't want to leave it lacking in anything. So, we don't want to just we don't prevail in prayer. It means I don't get what I'm looking for. Right? You know, I'm not prevailing. I'm getting impatient. Why ask God? Why go to God for things? Well, because you have no place else to go. There are things, you know, it's hard sometimes, because there are scriptures where it tells us not to rely on our own strength, but to rely on the Lord. And certainly we don't want to rely on our own strength, but to the degree that we have abilities. You know what I mean? Like, I don't expect God to levitate this cup to me because I can pick it up. Well, there are a lot of things down the line that I can do. I can earn a living so I can pay my bills. I can do a lot of things with that money, so God doesn't have to provide me food every day, because I can go to the grocery store. But sometimes we do need God's help. And when we do, we need to patiently wait for it. I know I got the Holy Spirit. It took it took years of asking, over a decade of seeking and asking as an adult for the Holy Spirit before anything happened. Anything remotely resembling the indwelling of the Holy Spirit. And I waited and waited and waited. So it's very important to wait. We don't want to walk away while God is answering. This is the word the Lord has spoken concerning Moab since that time. But now, the Lord has spoken, saying. So again, this is an older prophecy, apparently. Or it's looking back on some things. I think the warning came. I'm not sure what time. Well, It could be the part about the outcast, because that seems to be the only current issue in consideration here. Like, we have a current event. We have, they shall be as a wandering bird out of the nest, right? And then the present tense says, take counsel, let my outcast dwell with thee. Right? That sounds like the present. That sounds like what, if there's any this time or that time, it'd be that the time of truth when Moab is supposed to stand up and show themselves to have some mercy and virtue, that they might themselves might receive it. And the warning has gone out. But now the Lord has spoken, saying, within 3 years, as the years of an hireling, I don't know what that means, and the glory of Moab shall be contemned, with all that great multitude, and the remnant shall be small and feeble. Well, the years of a hireling, I often wonder about that, because maybe a year for a hireling is a short year. If it's an agricultural worker, like a year for a hireling might be 3 years for a hireling might begin in like March or April of 1 year, and then conclude in September or October 3 years later, or 2 years later, which ends up being like 2 years of total time. But you start in, like, you could start, imagine you started in March 2020, you worked that to that autumn, and then you maybe have the winter off, and then you work, you're hired for 3 years, you work from, you might start in March of 1 year and work all the way around a year, and then another year, and that's 2020, and then at the end, and then you worked March, then all of 2020, and then 2021 you work just till October, and so then you have time. So if you thought about the time from between October and March as like a half year, you have 2 of those missing half years. So instead of having 3 full years as a hireling, you have 2 years of time spent over the period of 3 years. I mean, you have 2 full calendar years, but you might have only been there for, for 2. Well, you've been there for 2 full calendars, but you actually have 3 seasons of harvest under your belt. And maybe that's what it means. Meaning there's some year, hireling year, that is different than a normal year. Because that's what I was thinking. A hireling, if he's hired for a job, could begin in March. And like a 1 year of labor for a hireling, let's say as an agricultural worker, you hired in March maybe, and then maybe you work till October. That's 6 months. That's what I'm saying. It's like it could be if you just work those 6 months and you have the other 6 months off every year, you could actually work 18 months in 3 years, which is less than 2 years. But I was just saying you could be hired for 3 years and only spend, for 3 seasons and only spend 2 years, blah, 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 blah. All right, good enough. I think I made that point clear enough. I'm not sure what that means. All right, that's mostly what it's saying. The glory of Moab shall be contemned. Contemned. I think that means held in contempt. Let me see. Held in contempt. To be lightly esteemed or dishonored. Yeah, contempt. To be held in contempt. The glory, that which was glorious, is contemned. And I feel like that's a part of human life, is it? You see it happen in our country. They tear down the statues of our founding fathers. Their glory is being contemned. That which they did, their accomplishments are being uprooted. By some. I mean, I was going to say not really, but, not as extensively. Like, the destruction of the statues is a more vivid example than the actual on-the-ground example of them destroying it, because our laws are still holding. But they are bending horribly as they try to, make the laws more suitable for a ungodly, nation. Well, the Lord has spoken, saying, within 3 years, the Lord shall be condemned with all your with all that great they had a great multitude, and all that great multitude also going to go away, and the remnant small and feeble. Just a small, feeble remnant. Well, it's too soon to quit now, so let's continue. Chapter 17, the burden of Damascus. Damascus being the capital city of Syria, and which exists to this day, right? The burden of Damascus. Obviously, not the same. It's one of the things, like, I don't take these place names and think, like, okay, this applies to that city right now. Because you can't do that. Nineveh, the capital of the Assyrians, had negative things spoken about it. But it also had times, like when God sent the prophet Jonah, and the city of Nineveh repented of its sins, and God gave them a reprieve. So there's no city that is permanently under, no city. Well, but this city certainly is not under some sort of permanent, what would I call it, condemnation. But it does serve as a type of other cities in the same position. And if they certainly came to the same position or a similar position, the same fate would await them. And you can look at this. I can tell you what. The past couple of weeks, there was the rockets firing on Israel and all that stuff. And the Palestinians, and then the news and all the press and all this stuff, and people getting up in arms about it. But people are going to hurt themselves and break themselves on the proposition that those that bless Israel shall be blessed, and those that curse Israel shall be cursed. If they want to be cursed, they continue to just fight. Because I've said this before. I understand the issue between the Israelis and the Palestinians is complicated. A lot of people don't understand the complication. They always take one side or the other. And I do think people who take the Israeli side are much more reasonable. But sometimes I feel like they whitewash too much how the Jews came to possess the land. But here's the problem. Even if let's say they stole the land. Let's say they stole it. They didn't steal it. The Jews bought the land from the wealthy landowners and there were renters there who often were expelled. Not in every case, obviously. But this creates bitterness, resentment. Whenever you have people coming in, buying up land and throwing people off of it, you're going to have unhappy people. And so there was a lot of that. And there were many ways in which the Jews tried to make peace with the Arabs and didn't want to throw them out of their country necessarily. But the refugee crisis became a reality because they created it themselves. Because in the 67 war, the Arabs told the Palestinians to leave Israel, to get out, because they were going to come in, and very soon they would be returning and occupying the houses of the Israelis. So the Palestinians all left so the Arab armies could wipe out the Israelis and push them into the sea unhindered. And that's what was going on. And so when they won that conflict, the Jews won, they took the West Bank, they took Gaza, they took these places and used them to improve their defenses. And there's no end to the desire to destroy them. It doesn't seem to ever end. The people who started the conflict or who stole the land or whatever, it was generations ago. You can't go to this generation now and try to make amends by we're just going to take everything away from the Jews and give it, you can't, there's no situation that's going to please, there's no resolution that will please some people short of the Jews being destroyed. And God won't allow that. So there's no resolution they're going to accept. They don't want peace. They want the Jews destroyed. That's not doable. And it's not going to work. It's going to backfire. I guess I brought it up because I was looking at Damascus and I'm thinking about the cities around Israel. I'm thinking about Syria. Syria and Hezbollah and Iran and that whole situation in the Middle East, which is currently kind of a mess. The burden of Damascus. Behold, Damascus is taken away from being a city, and it shall be a ruinous heap. The cities of Aroer are forsaken. They shall be for flocks, which shall lie down, and none shall make them afraid. Where Damascus is the head of Syria. And Syria is not just a city-state Damascus. It is a a state on its own. And they have other cities associated with them, Aroer, etc. And once again, human habitations are places now for flocks, where they will lay down, and no one's going to make them afraid. I mean, it's not like you can't put a flock to lay down in the middle of a city. They're too nervous. All the people around makes the animals nervous. All the activity, all the hustle and bustle of the cities and the streets and the unexpected events. It's not a good place for animals that are not accustomed to such things. I mean, you have horses that are accustomed to street travel and living and, around being around gunshots, weapons, even warfare. So, I mean, horses can be trained, and certainly other animals can be trained, but many are not. Certainly not sheep and flocks and stuff like that. You can't bring them in like that. It's not an appropriate place to keep a flock. The fortress also shall cease from Ephraim, and the kingdom from Damascus, and the remnant of Syria. They shall be as the glory of the children of Israel, saith the Lord of hosts. I should say it like this. The fortress also shall cease from Ephraim, and the kingdom from Damascus, and the remnant of Syria. They shall be as the glory of the children of Israel, saith the Lord of hosts. So Syria also will have a remnant from the destruction that's coming. They're all slated for destruction by the Assyrian, and for being enfeebled, and having many of their people slain. And the kingdom is going to cease from Ephraim and from Damascus. Remember, they were allied. Ephraim and Damascus, Rezin and Remaliah were allied against Judah. The king of Judah being Ahaz. Right? But Rezin and Remaliah were allied against Ahaz. And the prophecies of the chapters 8 and 9 and all that was given to Ahaz to assure him of God's continued protection in the face of the Rezin and Remaliah, the king of Assyria and Israel. Or Pekah, the son of Remaliah. Sorry, it's not Remaliah. It's Pekah, the son of Remaliah, king of Israel. One of the things it says is their glory is passing away. And the Ephraim and Syria are not the threats they seem to be. They're making a lot of, they're the tales of these two smoking firebrands. A firebrand is you take a log out of the fire that's on fire. It's a stick on fire. That's a firebrand. That's what they were likened to. The tales of two smoking firebrands. Now, firebrands are good for starting fires and good for making smoke and for presenting a sense of danger, right? If I've got a firebrand, who hasn't seen a kid with a firebrand and said, be careful, right? But the truth is, a firebrand is not a particularly dangerous weapon. It makes a lot of smoke. It's bright and flashy. But like a lot of weapons, they're not particularly effective. I mean, like the ball and chain, things like that, nunchucks. These are all fake weapons. And a firebrand is kind of like, it's better than nothing. Though I would probably rather have a nice sturdy club that wasn't on fire, personally. Because again, fire is like a fire. Like it says, the tongue is a fire. It is set on fire of hell. Fire, it can be your friend, but also, a little fire can kindle and create a lot of destruction. Because it doesn't take a lot of fire to spread. I mean, you just got to touch a little bit on the kindling, and a whole world of hurt can open up suddenly. And that's the power of fire and the power of words too. In that sense, that words are like fire. It's a little bit of words in the right place, man. It can kindle. I mean, you get the right rumor started, it can kindle things. And these were smoking firebrands, but they're not particularly. The point is, they weren't going to be very long-lasting rulers. They say, within 65 years, Ephraim shall be broken, that it be not a people, and Syria will be left a very small and feeble remnant. There's not going to be much here at all, is what he's saying. And they're going to pass away like the glory of Israel. All right. We're going to pick it up with verse 4 tomorrow, just because I don't want to go too deep in this. because the analogy from verse 4 about the fatness of his flesh, this is all connected. So I'm going to write down right away that we're going to pick up in verse 4 tomorrow, and which we will do. So until then, thanks for joining me in this study. I look forward to being back again tomorrow. Until then, here's another clip from chapter 16.